The first time I met Eleanor, I knew she didn't like me. It wasn't anything she said. Her words were always perfectly polished, like stones worn smooth by a relentless, cold sea. "Charmed, darling," she'd said, her hand extending not for a shake, but for a brief, weightless touch, as if I were a dusty objet d'art she was inspecting for flaws. Her eyes, the same piercing blue as her son's, scanned me and found me wanting. I felt it in my bones, a subtle, seismic shift that told me I would never measure up to the invisible standard she held. Her son, Thomas, was my son. We met in a rain-soaked London bookstore, both reaching for the same battered copy of Wuthering Heights. Our fingers brushed, and he'd smiled, a genuine, crinkly-eyed thing that felt like coming home. He was solid, kind, and fiercely intelligent, with a quiet strength that drew me in. When he proposed 2 years later under the same leaky bookstore awning, I said yes without a single doubt. My only doubt, a small, whispering shadow, was named Eleanor. Our wedding was a masterpiece of her orchestration, a tasteful, muted affair in the family's country house chapel. I wore the dress she suggested. I thanked the guests she'd approved. Through it all, she was a gracious, smiling figure, the perfect mother of the groom. But her eyes, when they rested on me, were like shards of ice. Thomas, blissfully unaware, saw only his mother's impeccable manners. "She's just reserved, my love," he'd soothe me when I tried haltingly to voice my unease. "She warms up slowly. Give her time." We moved into a lovely Georgian townhouse in Bloomsbury, a wedding gift from Eleanor and her late husband's estate. "To start your lives on the right footing," she'd said, pressing the keys into Thomas's hand, her gaze skimming over me. I was grateful, of course, but the house never felt entirely mine. It felt like an extension of her domain, filled with heirloom furniture and portraits of stern ancestors who seemed to watch my every move. The cracks began as hairline fractures, a comment about my career as a freelance textile restorer. Such a niche hobby, dear. Not very substantial, is it? A pointed remark about how Thomas looked tired, accompanied by a loaded glance at the simple supper I'd prepared. She'd invite herself for tea, always when Thomas was at his law firm, and hold court in our drawing room, dissecting the suitable girls from his past, the daughters of judges, the heiresses to estates, all of whom, she implied, would have known how to be a proper wife to a man of his standing. I began to feel like a ghost in my own life, a temporary occupant in a narrative she was constantly rewriting. I confided in Thomas, but his loyalty was a double-edged sword. He loved me utterly, but he also loved his mother. He couldn't conceive of her malice. "She's from a different generation, Amelia. She doesn't mean it like that. She just wants the best for us." The turning point came on a Tuesday. Thomas was away at a conference in Edinburgh. Eleanor called, her voice syrup-sweet, saying she'd left a folder of important family documents for Thomas in the study, and had accidentally taken my shears, the antique French ones I used for delicate fabric work. Could she pop by to return them? I agreed, my skin prickling. She arrived, impeccable as ever. We made stilted small talk over Earl Grey. Then her phone, left on the sofa beside her, buzzed with an incoming call. The screen lit up. The contact name was Victoria Hargrove, and below it, the preview of a text. "All set for Thursday. She'll be humiliated. He'll finally see." My blood turned to ice. Victoria Hargrove was the suitable girl Eleanor mentioned most often, the daughter of a lord, a glossy equestrian type from the pages of Tatler. I knew of her. I said nothing, my smile frozen on my face. Eleanor, noticing my glance, smoothly picked up the phone, her expression unreadable. "Oh, just the charity committee. Dreadfully tedious." But the seed was planted, and it grew thorns. After she left, a cold, clear resolve settled over me. This was no longer just subtle disapproval. This was a plan. She'll be humiliated. I waited until the house was silent. Then I went to Thomas's study. The important folder was on his desk. It contained nothing but old property surveys, a decoy. My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked at his computer. We never pried into each other's things, but the line had been crossed. I knew his password, our wedding date. I opened his email. Nothing. His messages. Nothing. Then, almost as an afterthought, I checked the deleted folder. And there it was, a chain of emails deleted but not yet purged between Eleanor and Victoria. The subject lines were innocuous: charity gala planning, guest list. But the content was a blueprint for my destruction. Eleanor was chairing a major museum charity gala. She had, it appeared, insisted I be put in charge of a display of historic textiles, a huge honor in my field. The emails detailed how Victoria, with Eleanor's guidance, would discover that the centerpiece, a priceless 17th century lace altar cloth I was to restore and present, had been irreparably damaged under my care. Photoshopped images were prepared. Witnesses from the museum staff, friends of Eleanor's, were primed to express shock at my incompetence and negligence. The gala was in 3 days. The plan was for Thomas to watch as his wife was publicly exposed as a clumsy fraud, ruining my professional reputation and, they hoped, shattering his image of me. The final email from Victoria read, "Once he sees her for what she is, the rest will be easy. He'll be grateful for your guidance, Eleanor, as always." I sat in the dark study, the glow of the screen the only light. I felt numb, then violently sick. The meticulousness of it was breathtaking. This wasn't a fit of pique, it was a campaign. She wasn't just disapproving, she was actively engineering my downfall to clear the path for her chosen successor. I printed every email. The mechanical whir of the printer sounded like a death knell. I didn't cry. A strange calm descended. This was war, and I now had the intelligence. When Thomas returned the next evening, tired but happy to see me, I asked him to sit down in the study. I placed the stack of printed emails on the desk in front of him. "What's this, love?" he asked, smiling, reaching for my hand. "Read it," I said, my voice steady. "All of it." I watched his face as he read. I saw the confusion first, then the dawning comprehension, then a slow tectonic shift of horror. His skin paled. His hands, so steady in a courtroom, began to tremble. He read them twice, his jaw tightening into a hard line I'd never seen before. When he finally looked up, his blue eyes, so like his mother's, were blazing with a fury that was entirely his own. "Amelia," his voice was a ragged whisper, This can't be real." "It is," I said quietly. "The gala is Thursday. The lace cloth is currently safe in my studio, perfectly intact. But by tomorrow, according to their plan, it will be found in tatters." He stood up abruptly, pacing the room like a caged animal. He ran his hands through his hair. "My own mother," he muttered, a world of betrayal in the words. "To do this to you, to us." He stopped and looked at me, his expression shattered. "All this time your feelings, and I dismissed them. I told you she meant well. My God, Amelia, can you ever forgive me?" In that moment, any residual doubt I had about him vanished. He wasn't choosing between his mother and his wife. He was bearing witness to a truth, and his moral compass, the core of him that I loved, pointed unerringly to what was right. He was on my side, our side. "There's nothing to forgive," I said, going to him. "You trusted your mother. That's not a crime. But now we know." He pulled me into a fierce embrace. "What do you want to do?" he asked, his voice thick. "We go to the gala," I said, a plan forming in my mind, cold and clear. But we turn their stage against them. The day of the gala arrived. The museum's great hall was a glittering spectacle of wealth and old-world prestige. Eleanor held court near the entrance, resplendent in navy silk, receiving accolades for organizing the event. Victoria Hargrove stood beside her, a vision in champagne satin, casting smug, pitying glances my way. I wore a simple emerald green dress, my hand tightly clasped in Thomas's. The moment arrived. Eleanor took the microphone, her voice mellifluous. "And now, a very special exhibit curated by my daughter-in-law, Amelia, a rare piece of history, painstakingly restored." She gestured with a flourish towards the velvet-draped display. A museum attendant, one of Eleanor's witnesses, stepped forward, his face a mask of faux distress. He pulled back the drape with a dramatic gasp. The crowd murmured. There, under the glass, was the lace altar cloth. It was flawless, intricate, delicate, perfect. My restoration work was, if I said so myself, exquisite. The attendant froze, his script useless. Eleanor's smile stiffened. Victoria's confident smirk slipped. Thomas stepped forward, taking the microphone from his stunned mother. His voice, calm and authoritative, filled the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "this beautiful piece represents not just history, but dedication and skill. My wife's skill." He looked at me, his love and pride shining openly. I am endlessly proud of her. Then he turned his gaze to Eleanor, who stood rigid. "However, we almost didn't get to see it tonight. We have discovered evidence of a malicious attempt to sabotage this exhibit, to falsely damage this artifact and blame my wife in an effort to humiliate her and undermine our marriage." A shocked ripple went through the crowd. Eleanor's face was a mask of porcelain, beginning to crack. "The individuals involved," Thomas continued, his voice like steel, "will be dealt with privately. But let it be clear, my loyalty, my home, and my heart belong irrevocably to my wife, Amelia. Any attempt to come between us is an attack on me and will be treated as such." He didn't name names. He didn't have to. The direction of his gaze, the pallor on Victoria's face, the absolute devastation on Eleanor's, it told the whole story. The silent, powerful condemnation of the crowd was worse than any shout. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of hushed whispers and averted eyes. Eleanor left immediately, a silent, defeated figure. Victoria vanished. Thomas never left my side, his hand a constant grounding presence on the small of my back. The fallout was swift and quiet, the way such things are in certain circles. Victoria's family, appalled at her involvement, swiftly packed her off to an estate in Scotland. Thomas cut off all financial ties to his mother. The townhouse was sold. We used the money to buy a bright, modern flat in Hampstead, filled with our own choices, our own memories. There were no portraits of stern ancestors, only photos of us, laughing. Eleanor tried, once. A letter arrived, full of convoluted justifications and wounded pride, claiming she only ever wanted the best for Thomas. He wrote back, a single, succinct paragraph. "Mother, Amelia is the best thing that has ever happened to me. Your actions were cruel, calculated, and unforgivable. Until you can offer her a genuine, unprompted apology and demonstrate real change, you will not be a part of our lives. The choice is yours." There was no apology, not a real one. There were a few more attempts at contact, frosty and formal, which Thomas ignored. The silence from her direction became our peace. It's been a year now. Sometimes, in my quiet studio, surrounded by the fabrics of the past I so love to mend, I think of that time, the fear, the betrayal, the icy dread. But mostly, I think of Thomas in that museum hall, his voice unwavering, choosing me in front of everyone. He didn't just defend me, he dismantled the world his mother had tried to build around him and declared me its center. The design Eleanor had woven was intricate and dark, meant to ensnare and destroy. But love, it turns out, is a sharper needle and a stronger thread. She tried to stitch a future of her own choosing, but in the end, Thomas and I rewove the pattern together into something stronger, more beautiful, and entirely our own. The unseen design failed. Ours, built on trust reclaimed and love declared in the light, is the one that holds.